For years, France has been using ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, as its puppet. Even if ECOWAS was established for economic cooperation between West African states, the ulterior motive was dirty. It was to help the Western countries, especially France, to project their power in Africa and secure their interests. That's why after the coup in Niger, the ECOWAS threatened to invade Niger and announced that Niger should put the civilian president back. But where the ECOWAS had gone when Niger was being exploited by France, being forced to sell uranium at the cheapest prices and asked to deposit its reserves in French banks. Why did not ECOWAS speak out at the moments when African countries got exploited by France? Well, all the answers lie in what ECOWAS really is and what it's trying to do. Recently, Dr. Arikana, the former African Union diplomat, exposed how ECOWAS is being used as a puppet by France, betraying Africa and millions of Africans. ECOWAS is not an organization for Africans but for France. When the military junta seized power in Niger, ECOWAS was deeply concerned and was on the brink of potential military intervention. The idea of an African body threatening to invade another African country was startling. How could an African organization with the sole purpose of economic cooperation could threaten Niger? Many people in Africa and the West thought that perhaps ECOWAS did not want the situation to worsen and, therefore, it is trying to solve the problem. However, the motives behind this potential intervention were not driven by a genuine concern for the people of Niger. It was to secure French interests in Niger, ensuring that French influence persists in Niger no matter what happens. The ECOWAS is being used as a lapdog by France to control Niger and initiate a military intervention, if need be. Since France cannot intervene directly, it has to use a tool which ECOWAS has become. You should know that ECOWAS is an economic alliance of 15 African countries focused on bringing prosperity. However, this objective was never realized. Instead, ECOWAS is now trying to become a military alliance, which is free to hire, to do whatever the West wants in Africa. It has been a colonial tactic to use one of the groups or factions in the countries to carry out all atrocities, instead of doing them yourselves. There are always resenting groups in a region or a country which are available to be hired. That's why we saw native groups helping colonial powers secure land in India. That's what ECOWAS is doing now. It's helping France, the former colonial power, to do whatever it wants, using ECOWAS's name. The reason ECOWAS was never paid attention to Niger's problems or any other member countries is that this was never on the agenda. You should know that Niger has grappled with persistent challenges throughout its history, and even as a member of ECOWAS, the organization had never found it necessary to step in. In Niger, the pricing of uranium raised questions. Despite supplying approximately 20% of France's power, only 20% of the Nigerian population had access to electricity, leaving the majority, 80%, in darkness. This discrepancy was puzzling. Furthermore, the decision of Niger to continue depositing its funds in the French central bank and retaining French as its national language, despite a small portion of the population speaking it, seemed dubious. Why did not ECOWAS intervene and help Niger gain true independence and break all strings attached to the West? This is a question only the ECOWAS president, who is also the president of Nigeria, can answer. During all time when African countries needed ECOWAS to speak, it did not. When drone bases were established in Niger, as if Niger had no say in determining who could conduct military operations within its territory, the ECOWAS and the entire world stayed silent. However, when Niger desired sovereignty, ECOWAS suddenly attempted to exert influence, resembling a toothless bulldog trying to intimidate. This sudden force appeared to stem from France. It seemed the logical explanation was that France, realizing its potential international condemnation for intervening in Niger to protect its interests, aspired to avoid such rebuke through the influence of ECOWAS. That's why France has officially announced to support ECOWAS if it intervenes in Niger. This should not be difficult to understand that someone helping France to gain more strength means that the entity has already betrayed. People in Africa already know that France can be everything, but not Africa's friend. Then why is the ECOWAS taking orders from France and making them its policies? Niger has no other option than to start a coup because France was establishing a military presence in Niger. With this, France was essentially dictating that only it could provide training to Niger's military, coercing Niger to deposit 50% of its reserves with the French authorities. If Niger's military had allowed this, it would have meant subordination for a lifetime. Hence, a coup proved to be the only solution. Dr. Arikana exposed all this, questioning what have the ECOWAS members done regarding the long-standing exploitations in the 14 former French colonies, ongoing for decades and deeply detrimental to the citizens of these nations. She said that ECOWAS has successfully remained inactive in addressing these critical issues, but it is crucial for them to confront these challenges head-on and propose effective solutions. She pointed out that behind the scenes, there are millions of children dying from starvation, countless going to bed hungry, numerous African youths struggling with unemployment, and countless women losing their lives during childbirth. These are urgent concerns that demand immediate attention during these crucial discussions. She said that instead of addressing these most immediate challenges, the ECOWAS is more interested in becoming a lapdog for France. To understand what she really means and what ECOWAS is doing, you have to know the context a bit. In July, the military junta removed President Mohamed Bazoum from his position, prompting celebrations in Niger. It's because the country has long been struggling with high levels of poverty, widespread food insecurity, and malnutrition, despite its wealth in uranium resources and its potential for development due to its coastline. Yet, Niger remains plagued by poverty, violence, and instability, with successive democratic elections bringing about minimal change. If Mohamed Bazoum was doing everything right and working for the people of Niger, why did 10 million people in Niger live in extreme poverty? If he was so loved, why did the people of Niger celebrate when he was ousted? France could see all that, but it felt it still had hope. That's when it decided to use its decades-old tactic of saving the great democracy in Niger. Perhaps the West has to understand that whenever superficial democracy is under threat in any part of the world, it's not their problem to solve. You should know that before the military junta's actions, the president of Guinea had already highlighted the core issue: France's imposition of a French-style democracy on its former colonies, which has proven ineffective. Each country should have the freedom to shape its democratic system according to its own unique circumstances and values. Hence, the military junta in Niger expressed discontent with the status quo and opted for a new approach, aiming to establish a form of governance more suitable to the specific needs of Niger. However, France and the West cannot understand that. For the West, if a leader comes without an election, he is illegitimate. But what about Adolf Hitler, who came to power after the elections? Can the West say his era was democratic and they completely support what Hitler did? Well, the answer is now, because everything relies on what the regime does for its own people. France vigorously defended the ousted president Mohamed Bazoum, sparking suspicions about its deep involvement in the political landscape of Niger. Algeria rejected France's request to use its airspace for a military operation in Niger, refusing to participate in any action that might attract international condemnation. Following the military junta's actions, ECOWAS, previously passive, attempted to intervene. However, its delayed efforts to exert influence were met with resistance. Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso joined forces in solidarity, sending a clear message that an attack on one would be regarded as an attack on all, as they continue to strive for liberation from the enduring dominance of their former colonial powers. Dr. Arikana clearly said that the ECOWAS and its members are siding with oppressors of Africa. Neither the people of Africa nor history will forget their names. She said that the African nations are now uniting, and the security pact between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso is giving a clear message. However, the leaders in ECOWAS do not have even the support of their own countries. It's because they are doing something for those who are aliens in Africa. Then how can the people of Africa support something like this which they know will harm their African brothers in Niger? People were protesting, and Nigerians specifically warned their president, who chaired ECOWAS, not to dare send Nigerian military personnel to perish in Niger for a cause that doesn't serve Nigeria. They argued that it was France's war, so let France fight it. Why risk innocent Nigerian military lives for a foreign agenda? President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for example, while aligning with France and pushing for a war in Niger, has various pressing domestic issues to address. Fuel prices are at an all-time high. Unemployment rates are soaring, and people are leaving the country. Police brutality remains unresolved, despite his recent electoral victory. Nigeria is falling behind its OPEC production targets, failing to produce the expected 1.7 million barrels, with current output of around 1.1 million. However, instead of solving these problems, the Nigerian president is interested in invading Niger. That's because his master, France, has ordered him to do so. There are numerous crucial issues that the Nigerian president could redirect his attention towards. If ECOWAS truly cared about Niger, they would have stood in solidarity with the country, denouncing the years of oppression it has faced. Dr. Arikana said that if ECOWAS was genuinely interested in Niger's well-being, they would have sought a solution moving forward, mediating a path to restore normalcy to the country. They should have focused on ensuring fair and democratic election cycles, reducing French influence, and fostering new partnerships for trade. Instead, their focus shifted to potential military intervention, seemingly for France's benefit. They appeared more interested in the benefits France could offer, rather than the welfare of the people of Niger. They are effectively selling out their fellow Africans, which is unacceptable. Dr. Arikana said that she urged those individuals at the table during ECOWAS meetings to consider the larger picture, including the ongoing exploitations happening in the former French colonies, which have persisted for decades without any substantial intervention from ECOWAS. These exploitations directly harm the citizens of these countries, leading to widespread suffering and starvation. Millions of African youths are struggling with unemployment, while millions of women lose their lives during childbirth. These issues need to be central to the discussion as well. If the leaders' interests truly lie in the well-being of Africans, then we must examine the issue from a global perspective. Dr. Arikana said that we cannot turn a blind eye to the crimes committed in Africa. France's continued exploitation amounts to nothing less than a coup. We must address the root causes and origins of these ongoing economic and political exploitations across the 14 former French colonies. It's crucial not to isolate the situation in Niger, but to confront the broader context and the genesis of the issues at hand. Avoiding this critical examination doesn't serve any purpose. Dr. Arikana said that military intervention in Niger should not even be considered as an option. She said that we must find better ways to resolve our issues. African leaders must come together for a candid discussion, focusing on what is ultimately best for the people, not only in Niger, but also in all former French colonies, and, ultimately, in all African countries. This moment calls for meaningful unity and a shared sense of purpose among African leaders. She said it's time to say, enough is enough. The people have spoken, and their voices must be heard. Now, it has been cleared that ECOWAS is a French puppet, established to legitimize French influence in Africa. The Economic Community of West African States primarily acts as a facilitator for Western interests, rather than actively working to improve the lives of Africans. A key concern is that ECOWAS has not effectively countered the enduring influence of former colonial powers in the region. Instead, it perpetuated the status quo of neocolonialism, enabling Western powers to maintain their economic and political stronghold in the area. It's because ECOWAS's policies and decisions appear to prioritize the desires of external forces over the long-term well-being of the African people. Critics often cite specific instances where ECOWAS seems to have favored the agendas of Western nations over the needs and desires of the local communities. Instances include situations where the organization has remained passive or failed to take decisive action against human rights abuses, political interventions, or economic exploitations orchestrated by foreign entities. Such perceived inaction has led many to question ECOWAS's dedication to safeguarding the sovereignty and interests of its member states. Moreover, concerns have been raised about the influence of Western powers in shaping the economic policies and trade relationships of ECOWAS member countries. Skeptics argue that certain trade agreements and economic partnerships brokered by ECOWAS may not always serve the best interests of the region, potentially leading to the exploitation of local resources and markets by foreign actors. ECOWAS never addressed critical socio-economic challenges in the region, including issues like poverty, unemployment, and political instability. The organization's apparent inability to implement effective strategies for sustainable development and social progress has fueled suspicions that its actions are guided by external interests rather than a sincere commitment to advancing the well-being of the African population. The argument that ECOWAS functions as a tool for the West is often grounded in its perceived lack of autonomy, its failure to confront systemic problems, and its apparent alignment with the interests of external powers. These concerns raise questions about the organization's genuine dedication to the progress and prosperity of the African continent. You should know that not all countries in ECOWAS are a tool for France. Rather, there are allies with varying oaths to stay loyal to France. Among them, the president of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is on the top of the list. Since he was more than just a secret ally to France and more of a lapdog, he was made not only the president of Nigeria, but the president of ECOWAS as well. It's he who is forcing ECOWAS to discuss military intervention in Niger, neglecting other urgent issues. He is a mere instrument of the West, due to his persistent alignment with Western interests over the well-being of Africans. Critics frequently highlight instances where Tinubu has seemingly ignored urgent domestic challenges in Nigeria. These issues include allegations of unbridled corruption, escalating unemployment rates, infrastructure deficiencies, and persistent social inequalities that continue to afflict the Nigerian population. The failure to address these pressing concerns, coupled with his apparent emphasis on Western interests, has instilled doubt about his dedication to advancing the welfare of the Nigerian people. See the irony that Nigeria's president requested the parliament to allow the Nigerian military to intervene in Niger. However, he never carried out such a request for the people of Nigeria and for their welfare. Tinubu already showed his leanings by making regional policies in favor of the West, especially those impacting West Africa, which has raised questions about his commitment to advocating for regional autonomy and sovereignty. Already, the ECOWAS was ineffective in confronting France's ongoing exploitation of African nations, effectively perpetuating a colonial structure disguised as promoting regional unity and collaboration. However, when Tinubu was made president of the ECOWAS, all hope for Africa's autonomy ended that day. It's hidden from no one that ECOWAS has consistently ignored France's persistent economic exploitation of its member countries, enabling the former colonial power to manipulate trade agreements, control financial systems, and extract resources at considerably reduced rates compared to global market standards. One critical element of this contention highlights ECOWAS's failure to take a firm stance against France's exploitative conduct in West Africa. This contains the unequal trade deals allowing France to acquire African resources, like gold and other valuable commodities, at significantly lower prices. Not only that, but the ECOWAS has neglected the issue of French influence over the financial systems of certain member nations, where a substantial portion of their reserves is deposited in French banks, providing France with an undue advantage in shaping their economic policies. Despite being fully aware of these exploitative actions, ECOWAS has refrained from condemning France's behavior, raising doubts about its commitment to safeguarding the economic welfare and sovereignty of its member states. This perceived inaction has been interpreted as implicit cooperation that perpetuates the neo-colonial ties between France and its former colonies, enabling the West to maintain its economic hegemony and dominance in the region. France has influenced Nigeria to control ECOWAS by training the Nigerian military and supporting Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in his rise. This has allowed France to wield its power because the Nigerian president will stay president for as long as France wants.